We are live.
All right, good evening. This will begin the deliberations for the March 18th Zoning Board of Appeals hearing. And we will get started. We will go in order of the case numbers in the order they were heard at the hearings. We'll start with case number 1.
General thoughts on case number 1. This is the driveway back on there on the corner of Post and Brooks.
I think it'll be an improvement. I think doing anything back there is an improvement.
I think that that's true, but I worry when, you know, he could just clean out his crap and park in his garage.
He did say at the very beginning that his garage was full of other stuff, and then he relented a little bit when somebody said, well, can you put the dumpsters in there? Maybe that was Joe asked that question. But then I saw the dumpsters, of course, against the side of the garage, and it makes it kind of crowded out there. So I have no idea what's in those dumpsters, but to me, there's 4 parking spaces there available right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then from my take, I mean, he kind of admitted after I went through the questioning is that, you know, he kind of jumped the gun on this and a backhoe became available and he just went at it without really, you know, planning and thinking. It's tough. You know, I think before getting that info, for some reason, I don't know, I just thought multiple people were living here. Before I read it was a single family, but for some reason I thought multiple people were living here and there were multiple vehicles. I just think the other remedy is just obvious. So I just have a tough time allowing more asphalt where there's an obvious other remedy that's right here for this case. That's where I'm at right now. This one is, I'm a pretty no on this one because I just think that the detriments, there's an obvious other solution for him with a 2-car. We're talking about a 2-car garage at this point, guys. This is not just like this is a 2-car garage. I get you have excessive items, but this one is, this one's tough for me to support. So I don't know how other folks.
I guess for me, because it's a weird spot, it's a weird location. You know, a typical driveway would have spots for 2 cars. Even if they had a 2-car garage, you would still be able to have some stacked parking. So because they're limited in that space, I guess that's why I'm a little bit more partial to their application. And I think that doing some activity back there would look good. If them paving it, I think paving it would look better than it does now. And if that then leads them to do some landscaping and grading, and then I think overall it'll be more appealing than it is now than just cleaning out their junk and parking in the garage.
Joe, any thoughts?
So yeah, you know, Tyrese, I agree with you too. There's an obvious remedy, but on the other hand, I look at the fact that it's a corner lot where he doesn't have a driveway that can go back to the rear portion of the property. Because being on a corner lot, we always consider corner lots kind of a special needs lots, as I call them, because they're always difficult to do setbacks. You have 2 front yards all the time. The other thing is that he is entitled to 3 spaces without a variance. So he's really only looking for 1 additional space, right, Matt?
Correct. This is for 1 additional space.
Technically, yeah. Okay. So those are just some thoughts. I'm not, you know, saying I'm there yet, but those are just a couple of my thoughts.
Well, I am pretty much, I am there. It's a couple of odd circumstances. As Cora pointed out, they've already dug the other spot. You got part of it cleared up. It's going to be a mess there if they don't fix it up. They've talked to the city of Rochester about curb cuts. They're trying to make that fit. And yeah, the guy appears to be a good neighbor, cleaning the sidewalk out for the people who use his bus and things of that nature. I'm inclined to vote yes on this because of those circumstances.
Do you have a straw poll for any of the others members?
Or convince me. I'm good now.
I should also make note, there are 5 of you here, and the approval or denial of an application, approval is what matters, requires 4 votes in one direction. Otherwise, it's deemed a denial.
Yeah, I think we have the votes for this. So you guys want to accept it?
Yeah, that's fine either way. I just want to, just so you're all aware.
You guys want to accept the standards as they were presented in the application and the statement of difficulty?
Let me ask this question to those that are inclined to approve. What improvements, if any, do you feel are necessary to the existing conditions? I know that it was talked about for potential plans in terms of the dirt removal that was there and sort of the existing conditions. Do you foresee any conditions imposed on improvements or?
That's a good question.
I don't know if you can enforce it, but I would say to move his trash receptacles into the garage would be one improvement. I don't know what his plans are to negotiate that grade change, because like right now, it looks like he's got about a 3-foot grade change between his existing and where the asphalt's gonna be. So either he's gotta lay back that hill even further towards the house or put up a retaining wall and if it's over 30 inches, he's gonna need a handrail. So there's some details there that I think somebody down at the permit office or something should look at to make sure that gets done properly and isn't just a hack job. Because right now it looks like he was just having fun with a backhoe on a Saturday. He just tore it all up.
He admitted he was, and I think that's what they have to. He admitted he did. You know, he just went at it. So I think you really have to look at that. Trash receptacles, I think that's fine. I mean, that's how they. You know, I'm okay with that. I don't want to make the poor guy put his trash cans in the garage. You know, I think I didn't have an issue with that. I think
you're not going to be able to enforce it, so I don't know if I want to make it a condition. So
yeah. I mean, they're but that grade on that what he's cut. I mean, that they've got to do something with that because it's
that grade. Are you
guys going to? So quick question, you guys. When I say you guys, is the city? If we do approve this, obviously they're going to talk to DHS. I've been watching too much MSDNC. So DES is going to talk about curb cut potentially. Is there any mechanism that will address the grades that we don't have to really weigh in on that of what he's cut out, Matt?
You're talking about the dirt that was removed where it was like cut into?
Yeah. That hill.
So what you could do, I'm going to talk out loud for a second and you guys can build off of this. If you're inclined to approve, but with conditions, you can require some sort of, I mean, I know they talked about some sort of ivy and there's all sorts of salt tolerant things that live through the winter, but some sort of landscape treatment where that earth is exposed to be able to cover it up, fix it kind of thing. And so what would happen is the permit that's issued wouldn't get closed out until all of that is done. I know it was also talked about one continuous surface from the area that was dug out all the way to the garage, which I think they offered testimony that the plan was to cover the entire thing. So if I know there was a concern about the two kind of differing materials, you could also, make a condition that the surface be the same all across if you're thinking about cleaning it up a little bit.
Matt, so is there an actual curb cut there, or is it just that it's worn down? They can just drive over
it may be that it's just worn down, but when we say you have to get a curb cut, you still have, even if there are no curbs, there's been so much, resurfacing over the years that the curbs are gone. You still have to get a permit to do work in that area.
Yeah, I was out there today. They've pretty much all dropped out. So the whole neighborhood, the whole street needs to be replaced with curbs.
So they would have to get that approved. Otherwise, when it does get a replacement curb, they're going to put a big piece of granite in there that they would have to ride over.
Yeah.
So yeah, they got to get that officially approved.
That's true. That's why we brought that up, because he mentioned that they talked to the city DES about a partial curb or halfway across or maybe 3/4. Got to be the full width. You can't have people driving over the edge of a rounded part of the curb, which we'll talk about later with that last case that we heard. So yeah, this exposed dirt, I think some kind of a cover plant, the kind that will just hold all the dirt together. I'm worried about what Joe said though, because that's pretty sharp drop off right now. And I'm thinking maybe 45-degree or wherever the case may be. That's too steep the way it is right now. That's gonna erode and going back on the paved driveway.
So
Joe,
I
what do you
guess,
think
I
about
guess I would
45
throw,
degrees?
I'm sorry.
Joe?
I think Joe's frozen.
Yes, that's Joe's classic look though.
Frozen in time.
That's a meme right there already. We can replace the Oprah meme with Joe like zoning tonight. I guess my while we wait for Joe to come back is I guess my motion would be, Matt, to grant with a condition that the earthwork that has been exposed is reviewed by DES. Is that okay, sufficient enough?
Well, that's not, it wouldn't be DES,
Who would it
because
be?
it's on
It'd be
private
us.
property, so
Who would it be? I'm sorry.
it would not be DES because that's on private property. So it would really be, I don't know, Matt, do you have?
Well, that's why I
what-
don't know what like Joe said, the guy may need a retaining wall, and I don't want to tell him he needs a retain. I mean, that's why I was cautious on what our judgment as a board, because he may. This is steep. He looks like he could potentially need a retaining wall.
Yeah.
So here's how that can be handled. If you do approve it on condition that that area of exposed earth on the private property needs to be quote unquote dealt with, you can make a condition that step one is work with building code on the potential for a retaining wall and what that looks like. And if building code determines that that's not required, this board would like to see some sort of landscape treatment to mitigate what it looks like right now. And I think that would help address that.
Okay.
Joe is not back yet though.
Okay. I do want to get Joe back because I'm going to be a deny vote. So I don't want to hold up the application. So I don't want it to not go through with my deny vote. So I do want to get Joe back.
Because he was definitely here for everything.
Matt, let me just clarify. So buildings would be able to review and approve the retaining wall, and if that weren't necessary, the some regrading and of it so that it's not subject to erosion. Would they be able to do that, or is that something you guys?
That is something they do. The building code
Okay,
has an
all right.
entire area of kind of subject to erosion, and I think, and this is, don't take this to the bank, but there are certain criteria that meets like when a retaining wall is necessary
Okay.
and how that retaining wall is structured in terms of backfill so that it can
Okay.
stand up to.
All right.
I'm gonna jot that down while we wait.
Has somebody called Joe to see if he can get back in?
Yeah, let me, I'm gonna go off video and sound here for a moment and try to help him.
Okay.
So give me just 1 second.
Joe is actually in. I'm actually going to bring him back. He was in the attendees. He just got in. There he is.
Sorry about that. I don't know what, it bounced me off and I had to come back on, so.
Okay, Matt,
Welcome
you're back. So I can make the so I think we found a solution. So I'll try to make this motion. So I'll make a motion to grant with the condition that the property owner works with the building code department on providing a retaining wall at the exposed area. If it is found that a retaining wall is not required, the ZBA is requesting that some type of landscaping treatment be mitigated for the be provided for the disturbed area. How was that, Matt?
It was
That
That was
perfect.
beautiful, Tyrese.
I'll second it.
Okay, so there's a motion on the
I told
table.
you guys Matt was the smartest guy here. He came up with that.
And a second, and there was a second, so I'm gonna run through in order. Jim,
Grant,
Tyrese,
Deny.
Cora,
Grant,
Joe,
Grant,
and Holly.
Yeah.
Okay. The motion carries on the stated conditions. Case number 2 is Mount Hope Plaza, and before you make a decision on this, if you are inclined to do so, you'll need to do seeker. So I'll get that pulled up while you start to discuss.
So I definitely understand, but what the kind of the issue here that I already see from like a real estate perspective is that the property owner is not going to invest to provide anything underground. It just doesn't make sense. It financially doesn't make sense for them to do that. And then to have an underground grease trap. Yes, Country Suite is pumping out a ton of business, but the size of their business, I do not think is adequate for an underground grease trap. So I get the neighbors, their opposition, but I think the solution that they provide, I think that's just untenable for Country Suite, for the property owner and for the tenants. You're never going to get the tenants to sign on to pay for something like that. I mean, and in just a realistic world, I work with commercial tenants all the time. So that's just unrealistic on what the neighborhood association was asking for. That's my personal perspective.
I also don't find it any safer. To me, someone made a mention of they can fall into the existing ones, not if you don't climb on it. I don't see how you could fall into something above ground, but something underground is safer. To me, an underground grease trap feels much more dangerous. And yes, a big ask. I think that it's a big ask.
And I think this is the last point I make is that when I go to that plaza, I'm coming from probably the 19th Ward way, so I come up that back way, and they do a good job at taking. I mean, it's about 3 houses that may see it, and then there's a huge parking lot that's usually empty, and they do a good job with the landscaping. I think this is a huge enhancement for what the property owner is proposing. And then that's why I wanted to ask the vegetation question, would they add that additional? And I think the other thing that I didn't ask him, because he did sort of mention in his testimony, yeah, they take the grease out at night and they can't see. And I did see they didn't have any lighting on the wall. So, that may be a suggestion to maybe add some wall packs, but then the neighbors may not like the added lighting. So that's just my general thoughts. I'll open it up for everybody else though. Jim, you got any thoughts?
I was very curious as to where that concrete pad would go, whether it would be parallel to the sidewalk or parallel to the building. And he explained why it would be along the sidewalk. And that brings up another point. If we agree with this, what is the land like between the sidewalk and the road when you come down 12 feet or 14 feet? I think if we agree to something like that, we should probably have to make sure that area between the sidewalk and the curb, if there is a curb there, is paved. Otherwise, it'd just be a mess. The trucks come out to empty those things up every so often. As far as that pole goes, just for your own edification, that pole was placed 60 years ago. And I took a look at that today. The pole split, and what that means is that it's dangerous. The white X is painted on there, means keep off, don't climb. And when they replace that pole, I'm pretty sure they're going to put it in the exact same spot. We use a front loader to hold on to the existing pole. Maybe we use an auger, foot to the north, or we lift the other one out and just dump the other one in. So I don't see that pole coming into play when it comes to where the concrete pad is going to go. But what I do like, Tyrese, was your idea about using some kind of screening along what would be the south side of that pad. I don't know if you're talking about where the east side of that pad would be or not, but certainly on the south side, the portion that faces those few houses on the road.
Yeah, I suggested. I think from a visual standpoint, it would make sense to do it around the south and the east. He's already going to have the green fencing that he already has for the dumpsters in the middle of the plaza. That's what he's proposing. And then I think with that added vegetation, I think that's a major improvement from what they've got going on now.
I agree. I also think that any additional barrier may, and I could be totally wrong, but may help with the smell. The neighborhood association mentioned the smell.
That's
And
what my
maybe-
thought was, but I don't know.
Right, I don't know. Maybe put some lavender in there. I don't know, something that could contain that smell. But country sweet, you can smell, blocks away. So who knows?
Yeah, and I don't know if they're smelling. I don't know if they're smelling the grease or the fried chicken that's being
Right,
fried.
right.
What about, it was mentioned to potentially locate them, as part of the public comment, moving them further north, either within existing enclosures or doing new enclosures there. Any thoughts or?
Well, that's funny you mention it, Mac, because was going to be my question. Rather than the fenced enclosure, if he had an actual small building addition that was like a room that matched the building materials and finishes, would he need a variance?
Yes, off the back. It is technically a front yard. If he were to do it within the existing enclosures that are already there, it would not. I don't know if there's room for that. I'm just looking at photos that were submitted. I don't know. But if he were to do, I'm sorry, let me back up for a second. If he were to do an actual enclosure,
Like a small room.
so it's part of the building, basically.
Yeah.
It's actually part of the building. That's a good question. I'd have to look at the front yard setback at that point because it wouldn't be a refuse enclosure area. It would actually become part of the building. If they could somehow incorporate it, the building is actually staggered at the back, as you guys see. So if they were able to do it on one of those like cross sections, it likely wouldn't require a variance because it would become enclosed in part of the building. But if they were to do another enclosure somewhere further north, that would require. I know the applicant talked a little bit about a change between the actual street and the rear of the building, which is also evident in the photographs. And of course, the opposition to that is, well, you could spend money to dig into the ground to change it. Now, it's of course up to this board making the decision if that's reasonable or feasible to the requested variance, but just something to consider.
I have a question, and I wonder if you all had understood how this will work. When they have the truck come to remove the grease, do they have a hose that goes into the vat and then pumps it out?
Yes.
Well, where does the truck park? I mean, I'm concerned.
Right
This is like
in
a
front of
public
it.
sidewalk, right along a public sidewalk. Anybody understand how that would work? Do they just park on the street there and run a hose across the sidewalk?
Yeah, I've seen those before. It pretty much works like that, and you just suck it out and you get out of there. So, I mean, I wouldn't say they're there for a long period of time. So I don't have that major concern about blocking that. And I know neighbors walk in the summertime, but I'm along that way. That's just not the busiest place, in terms of foot traffic for folks right behind the building. And then, so a truck pulls up, hooks the hose up to those types of machines, sucks the grease out of there, and they're on their way. That's part of my difficulty maybe with a building enclosure is that you have multiple users now having to gain access to an enclosed building. And then you have, when you do get it cleaned out, and when you do get the grease cleaned out, now you have to kind of, I think it may complicate and could create too many logistics for cleaning it up because grease is usually exposed for when it's getting dumped or when it's getting cleaned for restaurants and businesses. It's usually pretty accessible for the users and for people to come clean it out. It's not uncommon. So that's.
I think also, I'm sorry. I think also he mentioned that I don't know if he said that they do power wash it or they intend to power wash it.
Yeah, 3 times a year.
Yeah, but it seems that would be difficult if it was an indoor situation. And also all of it's food waste. So if it's indoor, I just see more opportunity for.
Especially because it's no ifs, ands, or buts. Grease attracts rats. I mean, everybody knows that.
And that's what I'm getting at. If you're outside, it's much different than having it in close to a building, attached to a building, an indoor space, which to me just breeds critters.
But I just want you to address the fact that this is, and of course this is just the hand drawn in sketch, that it's immediately adjacent to the sidewalk, and that you're going to have this pumped out over the public sidewalk, and that the opening will be right on the sidewalk. I mean, he didn't, if it's going to be in that location, how far back away from the sidewalk should it be? And is there another location which would not require them to pump the oil out over the public sidewalk?
How often do they pump it?
He said a couple times a year, I guess.
Oh, they replace
Right?
the container. They replace the containers a couple times a year.
Oh, right.
They
yeah.
come and vacuum it out
Right.
weekly.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
yeah,
that, I
forgot
believe.
about that.
I if it ain't broken, why? I mean, this is what they've been doing. I mean, that usually doesn't create a ton of mess. And this is it's basically going in the same location it's at. And then we want to also make it accessible for the users. I mean, you have those employees chucking around large. My concern is they could spill. The employees have the possibility of spilling the grease, trying to take it across, to another different location.
Where's the door from there where they're getting out on this drawing?
Pretty much right. Which drawing are you looking at?
I'm looking at the
Country
one where it's
Suites-
hand
Country Suites
drawn
would
in
do
where
it.
the grease thing would be.
Yeah, Country Suites.
It's right in that lower corner.
right there at the corner.
Yeah.
Country
It's
Suites.
that their tenant space is the furthest one.
Right.
It's on the end.
So why would this not work if that were pushed against the building around the corner?
I have a question. So if we say they move the location, are we traveling then over grass, or would it be on a concrete pad?
I think you would want to get it on a concrete pad, but Johanna, you were meaning move it into like the back parking lot. I just wanted to make sure
Because my thought in that question is that I would think you would want to eliminate grass, because spilling grease and grass and mud and sludge versus having it closer to the sidewalk to eliminate that potential of just like a sludgy buildup.
So he's proposing, I don't know if this helps answer your question. He's proposing, what is it, a 6x12 or whatever the dimensions are, parallel to the sidewalk to house those two things. So they would be placed on a concrete pad and then the enclosure around it.
Right. So then you're only left with that little space, right? Of like.
Yeah. So it'd be just like, what do you say, 3 or 4 feet set back off the building?
Yeah.
Well, I have a tendency to agree with Johanna as far as being right up to the sidewalk. When those gates are open, they're actually blocking the sidewalks every time somebody's in there dumping out their grease. So we might want to consider having that push back at least the distance of the length of the gate. So when the gate is open, it's not blocking the sidewalk.
So there's 2 drawings in here, and I just want to get clarification from the board. So he has one rendering where there's a highlighted in lime green where it's parallel to the building, but then there's another one hand drawn that's parallel to the sidewalk. He offered testimony that it's parallel to the sidewalk is the proposal, right?
Right.
Yes. Yes, he did.
Any thoughts on what Joe just commented about pushing it back?
We're gonna be pushed back a certain distance. Those gates are gonna be 6 feet long based upon this sketch. And it's gonna be a little bit back anyway, because the telephone cable and the gas line are both on the grass. The gas line is right along the edge of the sidewalk. The telephone's about another foot to the east of that area. You'd have to put it back at least 3 feet with the gates opening up, going out and crossing the sidewalk. You'd think you'd want it back as far as the edge of the gate would be, so the gate comes over, it's right at the edge of the sidewalk. Just a
He
thought.
can't encroach on the sidewalk with those gates. I mean, that's, and they're 6 feet, right?
Yeah, they're gonna be,
Yes.
so it's gotta be,
Yeah.
6 feet back from the sidewalk, minimum.
I would be fine with approving it and having you know, when he goes to pull permit, having you all determine the appropriate location of the gates. I mean, does that make sense? Since we're kind of, you know, I mean, if that's
When you say, look, you mean
that's
location of the
only
gates
hold up
too.
here is the gate swinging out on the sidewalk at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. Can't you guys just determine that?
So you're saying the length of the gate when it opens? Yeah, oh, absolutely. So the length of the gate based on the sketch has to ensure that when it is open is not encroaching on city right of way.
Yes, that's great.
There be some sort of sliding, would it be different if they open this way as opposed to this way?
Yeah, so what you can do if you are inclined to approve it with the conditions, what we would include is that, you know, depending on the gate style, I mean, he has it proposed that they're just swinging out like casement style, you know. But what he would have to show is that the length of the gates and then the location on the survey that show that when they're open, they wouldn't encroach out onto city right of way.
Yeah. In addition, I would ask that vegetation is added to the east and south side of the.
So he mentioned arborvitae's in testimony. Is that something you're all comfortable with?
I don't have a problem with that.
Neither.
Neither.
Do those
I'm
get,
just not, I'm not convinced he did it, prove to me there isn't a spot along the back of the building.
That's,
And I wish I had looked closer today when I was there, but anyway.
So you all, if you could, can certainly continue talking, or you can do a straw poll based on where you're all at to see.
I'm looking at that building right now and I'm thinking of how far that, if it was gonna be behind the building on the west side of the building, you've got a 6-foot depth for the unit to begin with, another 6 feet for the gate to swing out and that one over the sidewalk. That unit had to go quite a ways to the north to fit in that property. If you follow what I'm saying.
Say that again.
Yeah, say that again for me, Jim.
You have to figure, like Joanna was saying before, and also Matt agreed, that when the unit opens up, the gate cannot extend across the sidewalk or even partly across the sidewalk. It's short of the sidewalk, because that's where the edge of the right of way actually is. But if the unit is 6 feet deep and the gate is 6 feet long, that's 12 feet. Now take a look at your sketch. Of course, I'm not holding anything up anyway. That building is almost right at the corner right now.
Mhm.
And you have to go quite a ways north along that building to go to a spot where you'd have 12 feet from the edge of the sidewalk back to the building, right in that big vacant spot there.
I understand what you're saying. It forms a triangular shape, so you'd have to move further north, further away from the door is what you're saying.
yeah.
That's true.
Is that whole area grass or paved? I can't.
It's all paved from the edge of the building, back of the building there, the part along the road is all, it's all paved, every foot of it. And from the corner of the building going towards the south, that's all grass, every foot of that.
That's what I'm looking at. What is that, Norfolk? This one?
Norfolk is the street on the left side of the building as you hold it side of it there.
Right.
Yeah, that's pavement from the building up to the, where the brush line or tree line starts, whatever that is up there. Yeah, I went over that whole thing.
Is anyone familiar, Tyrese, you may be probably the most familiar with this. Is there any ability to have each tenant have their own indoor storage of such material? How does that work? You're on mute.
Tyrese, you're
Please,
muted.
you're on mute. I bet that was interesting.
Sorry, I was talking, and I was dropping my.
That was a very weird experience.
I was dropping my Google Map guide to take another look at the back where Joe was suggesting. That's really not common for restaurants. Grease traps are outside the back. And I mean, it's tough and the difficulty here is that it's front yards on both sides. So, I mean, that's where we are. I mean, grease traps are usually not grease containers are usually outside in the back of restaurants, because when you come pick them up, you know, the grease company comes and they suck it up and you're out of there. It's not really, you're not arranging it with anybody. They come and pick it up. And that's just very common with
Tyrese, were you able to pull up your Google Maps
Yep.
thing there in the back of the building?
Yeah,
Is there any wall space?
So there were photographs that you all have submitted by Mr. Mellon that show the area in the back pretty extensively. So you can certainly look at.
Yeah, they're on his photos too.
Yep.
And
There's a gas meter.
I mean, Joe, you could put one of each of them on both sides of Country Suite's door. The thing is, they've got to do something with those grades in that parking lot, because it's it kind of dips a bit. That the grading in that back parking lot is not really the best. And I don't know. I mean, the garbage cans are kind of not level that are enclosed. So I don't really have enough knowledge if you want those grease containers to be off leveled like that. So I think that's a bit more where we just don't have the information. And where he's pretty much proposing it's kind of weird. I think it was curb there and it's turned into asphalt. It's weird. It's weird how it is back there. And then you got the gas meter. You got the gas meter in the back there as well, right in between Country Suites. And from what I'm seeing from the photographs from Google, it's going to be challenging to put it anywhere in the space where Country Suite and Pontillo's is.
Yeah.
Obviously, as I think some of the opposition was, move it somewhere else. And that's just, you got employees then taking grease down distances to dump it. Where, I know where everybody else is, but I'm pretty much, I think what the applicant has offered is very sufficient.
Well, take a straw poll, Tyrese, see what you think.
What'd you say?
I was saying, why don't we take a straw poll and see where everybody's at?
Yeah, so I mean, I would support it with the addition that the vegetation is added on the south and east portions of the enclosure that's being proposed. I would support that. Jim, where are you at with this application? You want some more info? You want to see different options on the property? Where
Well,
they could go?
as much as I'd like to see it on the Norfolk side of the property, I don't see the room there to mount anything up there. So I'm inclined to vote also 6 feet off the edge of the right-of-way line. So the gates will then get over the sidewalk. And by the way, Tyrese, have you seen them vacuuming out oil in your career or grease?
Yeah, but out of a grease trap that's going into this. I've seen going into like the sanitary, not the containers.
Yeah, I was just wondering how long of a hose these trucks have. And they have to have a certain length out there because some of these grease traps are not right where you can reach them with a vehicle.
Yeah.
And so I just don't have a problem. I also know it doesn't take them long to suck 40 gallons of fluid back up.
No, it doesn't.
It's a 15-minute process. So that's my viewpoint.
I'm okay with it.
Holly?
I'm okay with it too.
Joe, you probably wanted to see, do you want to see more options? Probably?
Yeah, I would ask for additional information. So, but it looks like you've got what you need.
Okay, well, I'll put a motion out there to grant with a condition that, with two conditions. The first condition, that the enclosure opening gates are 6 feet from the right-of-way, from the public right-of-way. And the second condition that I would add is that vegetation is added to the south and east of the enclosure, around the enclosure being proposed.
I have two questions about the conditions. The first one is, do you want to put a number on it as 6 feet, or do you want to say setback to ensure that the gates are completely off of the right of way when open? And then it's
I'll take that, the setback
Okay.
that is. Yeah.
okay. Second thing is, as far as landscaping goes on the south and east side, do you want to do the arborvitae's that the applicant discussed, or do you want to?
I think those will be the best option.
Yeah, they grow up and fill out and cover, so.
Arborvitae trees to ensure the growth completely covers the enclosure.
That's the south side and the east side.
Yes, kind of a backwards L.
Because you can see the south side from you can see the east side from Mount Hope. So just to be on the safe side, that you're not looking at a green enclosed fence.
Hey, you can see them when you use that Frontier phone booth.
All right, so, well, someone can make the motion.
So I made the motion. I think we need a second.
I'll second.
All right, and this motion includes those two conditions that were just discussed. So there's a motion and a second. And Jim?
Grant,
Oh, stop. I'm sorry, we need to do seeker.
Yep.
Give me 1 second, I'll pull it up. And of course, the seeker is, needs to happen regardless of the outcome. Bear with me, guys. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna pull the part 2 up on the screen. Applicant has completed the part 1, which was included in the staff report posted online. Lead agency is the Zoning Board of Appeals, so we'll go through this and then I will have Tyrese sign and send back as the chair. I'm not going to read through each of these. I'll leave it up on the screen. Everyone has access to them. So if you could just take a moment, go through here and make the determination if either there is no or a small impact to occur. And then if there's any small impact we need to address in the part 3, we'll do that.
and you can answer these based upon what's currently there. Well, for example, number 3.
So what you're answering them is based on the, well, legalizing what's there, right? So it's already there. So the action is related to the granting of the variance to secure this front yard enclosure.
Yes.
All right, I will scroll. If there are nothing to address as moderate or large in the part 2, I will get this over to Tyrese to sign electronically. All right. So that being said,
Why don't you make a motion that you confirm
I was just gonna say, I'm
that there are
hearing
none of
nothing.
those impacts?
can I have a motion made?
I'll make a motion to accept the seeker.
Joe, the internet was cutting out. He did have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I guess I can just poll. And this is that the motion is that there are no significant negative impacts. Jim?
You say Grant?
You could say
Just
agree.
Just say yes or no.
Yes.
Took me by surprise.
Jim?
I already said yes.
Oh, sorry, I missed it. Tyrese?
Yes.
Cora?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
and Holly?
Yes.
Okay, so the determination has been made on seeker. Thank you for that. Now we can shift back to the motion that was on the table. I will repeat, was to be set back away from the public right of way so that the gates, when they are open, do not encroach on the city right of way, and that vegetation in the form of arborvitaes are on the south and east side of the enclosure. We will go through again here. Jim?
Grant.
Tyrese?
Grant.
Cora?
Grant.
Joe?
And
And Holly?
Grant.
So that motion on condition carries 4-1. Case number 3 is 34 North Winton Road. These are the signs for the Royal Car Wash. Change from Buckman's to Royal Car Wash. I'll open it up to any discussion.
I didn't have anything for this one. I'll make a motion to grant and to accept these statement of difficulty as presented in the written application.
I'll second.
Sorry, guys, I'm on mute as I'm talking. Any issues with the standards on this one? I just heard Tyrese say there are no issues. No significant detrimental impacts or anything to consider here?
Joe got Pastoral in trouble for putting that sign in the wrong place.
I don't know how that caught my eye, but I was just looking at it going, something doesn't look right.
No issues with that?
No.
No.
Improvement with the pole sign gone?
Definitely.
Yes.
And there was no public feedback on this one. All right, very good. So we can do, someone wants to make a motion on this?
I'll make a
Got a
motion.
motion and a second out there on the floor.
Jim,
Grant.
Tyrese,
Grant.
Cora,
Grant.
Joe,
Grant.
and Holly.
Grant.
Motion for the 4 signs carries 5-0. Next up on the agenda is 385 East Ridge Road. This is the demolition and rebuild of the specially permitted use residential care facility for the front yard setback.
So Matt, really, they didn't need a variance for height or anything in this C2 district?
No, so the district, so I think what's a little bit confusing, based on the public comment is what's basically there is a single-story ranch. It's a very residential looking structure, obviously, but the structure is in a moderate level commercial district. I mean, C2 is much of Lake Avenue, much of Monroe Avenue, like it's a moderate level commercial district. So the district itself does not have, if you're coming in building like a mixed use building or something like that, there's not a height restriction. It's
No architectural standards either, huh?
Ooh, I know.
well, there are design standards, but they're not to the level that you're asking about. There are design standards, but
Yeah, I mean,
Drives me wild, but
it was painful not to be able to talk about the architecture.
no, it was just like, oh, guys, but I get it. I
Self-control, guys, great self-control.
Well, Johanna's taught us very well. You have to stay within the guidelines of what you're
Gotcha.
listening, and it was strictly setback. It kind of reminded me of the building on Mount Hope, right across the street from the cemetery, where remember
Boy.
they built that, what was it, a 6-story building there or something?
Oh, Gold
Um,
Street, yeah.
Yeah, 4, no, well,
Old
yeah.
Street.
Gold, yep.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe, the new
There's-
thing is like you just make it, all this architecture is gray, then you just throw a bright color somewhere in it, and it's just like, yeah, it's fabulous. And throw some glass, just a bunch of glass, and that's it. Let me not get Joe going tonight. But I was, the setback was fine with, I was fine with the setback.
Yep.
I mean, that's the only issue we have right now, and I get why they needed to do that. I like how they explained it a bit more in their oral testimony.
Yeah, they detailed sort of the location of the building and why it's there, which I know a couple people talked about in terms of, it was Joe, providing some protection and privacy for the area in the backyard. They also talked a little bit about the.
Make a motion. I will make a motion to grant the setback variance based on the standards that they have listed, but also because of the importance of the play area for the children. If they push the building back further, it would squeeze that down to not a very functional area for the kids to play in. So that's where I'm at.
I'll second that.
So Jim,
Grant.
Tyrese,
Grant.
Cora,
Grant.
Joe,
Grant.
and Holly.
Grant.
Great. That motion carries 5-0. Next case is number 5. This is 255 Hamilton Street. This is the Rochester Housing Authority project.
Well, I wish the applicant took a page from the applicant side's design book. So I shouldn't. Yeah, never. Anyway, I think it's a great project. I think it's a really good improvement, and I really like the design that Edge came up with. It's just keeping in scale and in character of the neighborhood and getting rid of those, looks like 1960 apartment buildings.
Yeah.
So it's an overall win-win. I just think it's a great project. So
Yeah.
great landscape design, great site planning too. I just thought the site planning was very good.
They have those block buildings going away to something that looks more like a house. Is great. I looked at the color diagram that she referred to, it's called the Vine Street View, when I was out there. I almost fainted because I saw those 5 units out there with steps coming down to the grass. Wait a second. And I looked at the detailed location and see, yeah, they are extended out to the sidewalk. Scared the heck out of me. I don't have a problem with the width of the proposed driveway. I just don't see it. So I'm in favor of this application.
One of the things to remember too with the lot coverage, and I know they talked a little bit about sort of the recreation space. Keep in mind too, they're going down a few units. So in terms of like a density, it
Exactly.
kind of levels the playing field a little.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to grant and to accept the standards presented in the statement of difficulty.
Second.
All right, and we're gonna go the opposite way in the alphabet this time. So Holly,
Grant.
Joe,
Grant.
Cora.
I'm third no matter what. Grant.
Yes, yes, you are. Tyrese
Grant.
and Jim.
Grant.
Well, I never get to go first for anything, so that was very exciting.
I'm
You're
impressed.
welcome.
This late at night, you're able to do that, huh? Pretty good.
That's my bedtime.
Held Highland.
Highland, you
So next month.
Right.
already voted on. If anyone is watching on this one, Highland was adjourned to the April zoning board hearing. Next case is case number 7.
The date is what again?
April 15th.
April 15th. Okay, great.
The date for the 1385 Highland is April 15th zoning board. So that brings us to case number 7, 131 Harvard Street.
Any thoughts on this one, folks?
Not really. It's existing. It's going to get paved. I'm happy about that. Yeah, I just don't know. If that driveway is extended farther back, it makes me wonder whether that would qualify under the coverage rules. I don't have a problem with it.
I don't either. I like that she wants to keep the green space in the backyard instead of extending back.
Can I ask you guys to address the curb cut issue, though? The fact that the car that is parked first in the driveway appears to be driving over the tree lawn and the curb cut and not honoring the curb cut.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely good. Didn't we ask her about that? I think I asked her if she talked with DES, and she said she's waiting until,
Yeah, she's
It
waiting.
hasn't been approved,
right.
and I think it's unlikely to. Keep in mind that when you have a double curb cut like that, you're eliminating an on-street parking space. It's also something that everybody would love to have a double driveway in the city. And if she applies and gets approval for that, a whole lot of other people may be doing that. So I think it's unlikely that DES will approve that, but we don't know. But keep that in mind that the curb cut, the way it is now, is really unacceptable, the way that they've been using that. That it's unacceptable to have the driveway and have people driving over the tree lawn. And, you can see it's just a big mud hole now. That's meant to be grass. And the problem with expanding the curb cut is you got a tree there. So it's not going to happen most likely.
Yeah, so I was under the impression
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was under the impression when she had worked with a colleague of mine in the office on getting the application to, as an important point, that DES had been addressed, which is not what she testified. Regardless, to Johanna's point, there is a street tree extremely close to where this would line up if they were to even approve a curb cut. And based on my experience, you can't pave up to a tree within a couple feet of it. It's just not feasible. It kills the mature tree and is a detriment to city resources that have taken time to plant the trees. So something to consider.
It does show up very, very well in the second photograph of the package. And the tree trunk shows very well.
Yeah.
So can we approve that it only be paved from where the curb cut is, from that line over?
I mean, we really don't have any say in terms of the curb cut here tonight. She would have to go to DA.
Correct.
Yes, I think to Joanna's point, it was, reducing it. It's kind of bad on this applicant because the size of those driveways is pretty much the size of every house on that block. They have those big double driveways like that. I counted pretty much every house on that, 5-6 houses, and they all have much larger curb cuts. I'm fine leaving it as it is. Sometimes I don't,
Do you think it's feasible to put some sort of a barrier between the sidewalk and the driveway? I mean, I know it would create an issue
is
for
that
the car parking there.
city's responsibility, or is that the property owner's responsibility?
Well, if
on
you're
private
going to
property.
allow her to park in that first parking space, it is inevitable that car is going to drive over the city tree lawn. And is that acceptable?
So what I'm describing is if you put some sort of a buffer in there, they have to parallel park, right? But it would still give that additional space that's being sought in that front area.
What do you mean by a barrier? Like what kind?
I don't know if you wanted to do landscaping, or I guess landscaping would, I mean, you'd have to determine something appropriate. It's a residential
Or
neighborhood.
I would support expanding the curb cut to the current grass line, because if you look closely at how it's laid out right now, even if you expanded the curb cut, she could still have, you could cut out. I see you, Joe. I hear you. I think it possibly easier just to give her a little bit more curb cut. It may not line up to the driveway, but I don't like that. How that is.
She was already offered that, Joe. The applicant has been offered that. I said, if you cut out this little triangle to prevent from parking there.
Oh, you offer her that? Okay.
Oh yes, a permit will be in your hands that day, but that didn't happen. So.
Yeah, I think looking back at it, I think if DES really takes a close look at it, I think you can add a curb cut there. It may not be a full one, but I think she could expand it a bit. where it'd be easier to get out. Because if you look closely now, they have gravel kind of down where there should be grass there in a portion of it. And I think if you look closely, you don't have to give her the full length of her driveway, but you can expand it to make it a bit more accessible. It's not going to be perfect, but I think you could get there. Just my thoughts. I think DES
But
and
you
her
can't commit our DES to that. We can't.
I can't commit them to that. That's
Yeah.
why that's why I support the application as it is. And I'm not.
Would it help if we would it help if we told her to go to DES first and then come back to us?
I mean, you could. So there's a couple of ways to think about this. You could do the hold is kind of what you're describing. You could also approve it on some condition that she work with DES to line it up, which I think is going to be difficult. But in answer to your question, Joe, yes, you could push pause.
Joe, you're muted.
What's next month's agenda looking like?
I don't think it's too bad. You could do next month.
Okay. Maybe would that help? Would help anybody like knowing what DS? My experience with DS is exactly what Matt and Johanna are saying, that they're so difficult to get wider curb cuts. That's been my experience, just because it messes up the on-street parking and everything else. So, but yeah, just to give her a chance.
If the board is,
I mean, who's it? I mean, I guess we should take a straw poll. I'm in favor of supporting the application.
Okay. Yeah. I'm a no.
Okay.
I'm a deny.
I guess my question is, because if we don't get the curb cut and we approve it, then she can just continue to park the way that she's parking, right? If it's paved, and then like Johanna said, she'll just be driving over the curb. So could we permit it? Can we permit the length of the driveway, but not the width? To tighten it up so that she doesn't have driveway that extends width-wise beyond where there is curb? Does that make sense?
no, I don't understand that.
That makes sense to me.
So she wants to pave this wide, right?
Yep.
Curb.
Yep,
And
house
here.
to house.
So
House to house, yeah.
right. So can we approve only paving what lines up with the curb cut? So that
Oh.
this space, she turned back
Yeah.
into landscape.
Yes, you can absolutely do lesser relief.
Yeah.
So lesser relief is they didn't get what they came for, but they didn't get denied. They got something in between.
So then
The
she
other,
goes to the length, but then we're not, and then that would stop her from even having to deal with getting the curb cut and going to DES.
But part of that is two things with that. Number one, I just think that's so wrong to infringe that potential cost on a property owner. That's like, and I get it, but I just think that's way too far. If that's the case, poor woman might as well just pave in the back and get her permitted, be on her way, what she may end up doing now, because then she would have to turn that back into grass. I mean, that's pricey. And then the other piece is looking at the other piece is with lesser relief. She's already stated in her testimony that the flow for all of the vehicles work. And then now we're talking about shortening that, which potentially could create difficulty for the people living there. I mean, I'm not going to get anything else from DES. This has been like this since property owner wants to just improve it. The driveway's falling apart. That's where I am. Just pave it how it's been. If it ain't broken, I don't want, sometimes I just think that's just too far for me to go in terms of shortening it. That's just where I am. My thoughts.
It's a three family, right?
Yeah. And they've got 5. So he's looking at 5 vehicles now. And my thing is too, this is if you looked at all those houses, they all had those huge driveways. This is not unique. Pretty much every house on that side of the street had those enormous driveways. So it's not out of character with what she's asking, a simple ask, what she's asking this board for, and my perspective. That's just where I am. And
I guess where I'm stuck is just that if the curb doesn't line up, then it doesn't feel like it makes sense. I agree that it should be wider, but if they're not going to widen it, then even if she paves it, it's still sort of a mess. No, I don't know.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
so-
she didn't really state, is she paving the portion from the sidewalk to the street? I think her biggest concern is getting the rest of it paved from the sidewalk to the backyard.
Okay.
You know, she may pave that little portion, but I think her biggest concern is getting that driveway is pretty broken up. I mean, in bad shape.
So this has come up before. There were some townhouses that were about 10, the garage was about 10 feet from the sidewalk. And the concern was approving a condition that would provide for cars to potentially park over the sidewalk being longer than 10 feet. So there's definitely a balance that needs to be struck between giving someone an approval on private property that may or may not coincide with the right of way. Just for point of reference in terms of this application. Tyrese, Cora, and Joe have all offered input in terms of a straw poll. Holly, Jim?
I'm with Tyrese. I'm okay with it.
I like Joe's idea. I really think that the experts in DES, and if she can at least talk with them about what has to be done before we approve it or deny it, it makes more sense.
So we have, it sounds like 2-2 with Cora in the middle, both alphabetically and on her vote. So regardless of which direction she goes, it still ends up with a vote as a default denial, which is treated as a denial, but she's allowed to come back. So the other option is you can hold it and she can come back, or you can vote and she ends up with a default denial. Keep in mind, a default denial is a whole new application, a whole new fee.
So I would go with either the condition that did we say that? A condition that she work with DES and try to work that out, or go to DES and then come back. I guess I'm okay with either one of those.
So I don't know if there's any paving happening in the next month anyway. We're still sort of in winter. So
Right.
if you're inclined to push pause, you could do a hold and not a condition if she's able to work with them, and then you can render a decision. So what you can do is vote to adjourn it to the April 15th hearing, and you could do that now, and then she'd be able to come back.
I'd like to do that because even if she tried, at least, she tried.
Well, what do you all want her to get from DES? I guess I'm confused there on what more information, because we need to tell her, hey, we want you to go to DES and do. I don't even think she wants to bother with the curb cut. That's just my opinion. I think she just wants to pave that portion and be done with it. So what do we want her to get from DES? I guess that's my question.
Well, she wants a wider curb cut. I think she apparently
did state
I think
that,
she said that, because otherwise it's really not feasible for that first car in the driveway. There's no way they can park there and get out onto the street without riding over the tree lawn and the curb cut.
Okay.
And so she's got to, and I think I would really have a concern about you guys approving a parking space that forces them to drive over the tree lawn and curb cut. So she needs to find out whether DES is going to approve a wider curb cut.
Or if it's realigned somehow, but then if that's the case, she would be incurring those costs as well, so.
Yeah.
They are the experts.
I'll make a motion to hold and requesting the applicant seek advisement from the Department of Environmental Services on the option of providing a curb cut for the property.
I'll second.
Second.
Great. Holly?
Yes, grant that.
We're doing the hold. We're doing a hold. Joe?
Holding is yes or no. And
Yes, I got confused. I'm not used to going first.
Joe? Did you say yes? Cora?
Yes.
Tyrese?
Hold.
yes.
Yep.
And Jim?
Yes.
You could do, Joe, you could do hold,
And the last case is case number 8, 505 Bay Street.
Sorry, I didn't mean to reel into the guy, but they can fix this place up a bit. That was my opportunity to tell them to fix the place up. It needs to be fixed up.
Well, and we've seen a lot of these applications where this first more commercial space in these residential neighborhoods just doesn't have a life anymore. And they're all getting converted into residential units.
Right, so
At least it's a way to repurpose the building.
And I peeked in the front window. It looks like it did look like a residential space. And I looked in the window and I don't know what you could put in there that's commercial, just how it's made up. It looks as if it could, I think it'll be very easy for them to make it into the studio.
Makes sense to me.
And it doesn't have a currently, I think some of these we've gotten, Joe, in the past where they have the commercial where it's larger windows. This one is made up just as if it's existing as a residential property.
Agree.
They've infilled it. All those storefronts are all infilled. Anybody want to make a motion?
Gonna make a motion to grant.
I'll second it.
Holly,
Yes, Grant, sorry.
Joe,
Grant?
Cora,
Grant.
Therese,
Grant.
and Jim.
Grant.
And so that motion carries 5-0. And that will conclude the deliberations for the March 18th zoning board.